Hi, my name's Steve and welcome to the Seaside Allotment channel, and today just down on the plot to do a quick harvest, and it's a great example actually today of why it doesn't pay to plan too much. And it's ironic actually because I've just finished the planting plan for the plots just this morning, and then I arrived down at the plot and I see that I've had quite a few failures. I'm just finishing harvesting some beds. Another bed's kind of 50% harvested, and maybe I could just harvest the whole of it and replant it. Just lots of opportunities to kind of tweak what I'm doing, which are different to the plan that I've just finished. And so that's why it just, it's always worth remembering not to stick slavishly to your plan, to have plenty of spare plants to take advantage of opportunities, and to constantly kind of be looking around the plot, assessing whether things are going to plan or whether it's better to make a change. And so what I'm going to do today is I'm just going to show you around the plot at the beds that I've adjusted my plans for, and I'll be interested to see what you think. Oh, the other thing of course is the weather. So right now we've got a 10-day weather forecast which is really mild for January. It's not as mild as some parts of the country, but basically no frosts, relatively light winds, quite a bit of sunshine. So pretty good actually for getting some plants in the ground. So yeah, let's take a look round. So this little bench in the polytunnel is where I keep my spares. And so as you can see, I'm nearly clear of spares, which is good because pretty soon I shall have lots of stuff on this bench that's planned for early spring. So the first thing is filling gaps in existing beds. So I've got lots of spare lettuces. In fact, I've hardly got any left now, but I filled quite a few gaps in this bed. I filled 2 or 3 gaps in this bed. Filled 1 gap in that bed and 1 other gap in another bed. So it really pays to have spare plants. Now, what I find is that when you plant at this time of year, you've got a 50-50 chance really that a plant will survive, but it's better than a 0 chance when you've got something dead. Now, why have they died? Now, I put a lot of it down to damping off, maybe not damping off, but the very damp weather that we've been experiencing recently, causing stem rot. But as I've dug up a lot of these plants, I've found cutworms underneath them, the ones that have died. So it's cutworms that have been eating away at those stems, and then the stems have rotted through. So that seems to be the main problem, and cutworms are a bane of my life, really are. I always seem to get them in the lettuce beds and the brassica beds, and they're a real pain. And as I was shooting that little snippet of video, I could see a slug climbing up one of the lettuce plants, and so we've still got active slugs in these beds, and that's because they are under cover, and it's still a relatively nice environment for the slugs, and they've not retreated down into the soil. So I'm always on the lookout for slugs, and of course they're one of the other reasons that some of the plants have failed. So next up was this bed, which was full of Navara, and I really like Navara in the autumn and I really like it in the spring, but trying to get Navara in these cold frames to overwinter, there's a better view there of the cold frames, to get them to overwinter is quite tricky. So I'd lost about 50% of the plants, and I still got all of January and February to go, so I wasn't very hopeful that they'd get through. So what I've got are these little tiny winter densities. So I thought, yeah, I'll pop those in, clear that whole bed, obviously pop those in. I didn't quite have enough, so I popped in some mizunas that I had as spares around the edge there. So this bed is one that I'm just finishing harvesting the spring onions from. So we had spring onions all the way around the edge, and we've just finished the harvest of those. And again, I got some mizuna, so I've popped those in, and hopefully they'll do pretty well. I'm not a massive fan of mizuna, but it is a nice addition to the salad mixes. 3 or 4 leaves per salad mix gives it a bit of spice. So the next one is a bed I've been experimenting with to see whether I can overwinter carrots outside. And I think the conclusion is not if you've got slugs still active in the bed. I had really good germination in this bed, but now there's hardly any carrots left. So I've got an option here. Do I replant the carrots or do I put something else in? And I happen to have these lovely little beetroot. And this is these two varieties. There's Early Wonder and Detroit Globe, which are designed to overwinter. These plants look really nice, so I'm tempted to fill in all the gaps. I'll leave any carrots that's still there, I'll leave them in, but any gaps, I think in one of these beds I'm going to plant beetroot, and then in the other one I'm going to replant in February with more carrots. So we'll see how that goes, and this is the one I'm going to replant because this has got the most carrots left in it. Both of those should be out of the ground by May, and that's when I need this bed for what's going in here, peppers. So finally I had this bed come spare, and I thought, well, what am I going to do with it, because it was in November time, and I thought, well, you know, there's not much I can plant in here in November, but I just had some, so I popped some radishes in to modules. I germinated them at home. That takes about 7 days. I planted them about 14 days, after 14 days. And of course, you know, am I going to get a crop off them? I don't know. But, you know, you can still eat the leaves, and these leaves should start growing really nicely fairly soon. It does actually look as if some of these are starting to form little radishes, so maybe. Anyway, rather than just having a bed empty, I always like to fill it with something, so radishes it was. So that's me little beetroot bed interplanted with these spring onions, which were also just spares that I had to try and find somewhere to squeeze in. So I'm really pleased with those. And you know, it'd be really demoralising to have a really kind of high value bed, because this is one of my little low tunnels that just doesn't deliver for me over winter. So, well, when I say really demoralising, I'm probably overstating that a little bit, but anyway, slightly disappointing is probably more true to the fact. I've never overwintered beetroot before, but these are some of the plants that were planted at the correct time of year. Same batch basically as the ones that were in the trays, but they've been in the ground for longer and they're growing on really nicely. So I've kind of reasonably high hopes for these, but it's an experiment, so you can never be sure. And apart from harvesting and planting, there's not that much to do at the moment. Just keeping plants clean. So you can probably see lots of these plants need a little bit of work. I'm very pleased with those now. I normally don't grow lettuces like this and, you know, let them mature into hearted lettuces. I normally just harvest one leaf at a time. But what I decided to do this winter is just experiment with these Winter Marvel, or Marvel of Winter, not quite sure which one they are, because it's kind of nice to have an abundance of mature lettuces in the ground in January, because that's always the kind of time when we're struggling the most to get a good lettuce harvest, and then, you know, growth picks up on the lettuces that we've been harvesting the outer leaves of, and the new season's lettuces like these start to come on stream. So I mentioned that we've been harvesting, and at this time of year we basically take a little holiday for 2 weeks. So we only harvest just for Debbie, Jennie and I, and John and Robin. And so this is what we picked. It's a nice little harvest for the end of the year. So what have we got? We've got some cabbage leaves, we've got some lovely mixed brassica leaves. There's about 8 different types of brassicas in there. A little pot of herbs. Absolutely gorgeous mixed brassicas. And in here we've got some Romanesco cauliflower, sprouts, colettes, red cabbage. And we've got some really lovely salads. We've got a few little carrots, radicchio, 3 or 4 types of lettuce leaves, spring onions, rocket, all sorts of stuff in there. Oh, we've got some ochre as well. These are ochre. This substitutes for radish for us in the middle of winter. What else have we got? We've got some spinach. We've got some really nice spring onions for cooking. We've got some lovely new potatoes, a few little carrots, just one for some reason, artichoke, and then we've got some field bean tops and some more salads. So that's pretty much it. Pretty pleased with that. So we go, that's it for today. Planting starts in earnest in January. I'll see you soon.